Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users. I think we got a hacker.
Shall we play a game?
Good morning. It is 08:43 and it is June the 17th, and this is your morning brief. There was a lot of interesting news over the weekend. When I say interesting, it was more a case of the news in general, not specific. I mean, there was a lot of specific type stuff, and we'll get into that. But one that was interesting was talking about was, the government's becoming more offensive. Going after the Russian power grid. I don't think that's just a good thing to be sort of talking about. I think it was the New York Times that published that article. I just think that's not a particularly good thing to be talking about. If we do have an offensive capability and we are increasing it, probably shouldn't keep going on about it. I mean, that just blows my mind. The other thing was something I touched upon was that the Telegram, the chat messaging system, and it's suffering still from a powerful DDoS attack. And that's, again, in relation to the Hong Kong protests. So, we're starting to see a little, it's really interesting how business and governments mesh in the online world, and how governments seem to be able to get away with a lot more than what a business would do, and how it affects business. There's also, on the vulnerability front, there's a critical flaw reported for the Evernote extension for Chrome users. I would make sure that, obviously, patch, update if you can't need to, but it's definitely something that needs to be doing. Just looking at what else they're talking about. Actually, it was kind of interesting, the medical pumps hacking. I'm sure, people saw that. That was on the 13th, which is probably the Thursday or the Friday. But they found, there's some CVE vulnerabilities in two medical workstations. I've always said medical is a really interesting area because, it has to go through a lot of programs to ensure that it's, FDA approved. And having been a pen tester, testing against hospitals and medical, there does seem to be a bit of an issue with medical places in general, that is. We've seen a lot, or when I'm testing, there's a lot of vulnerabilities in all these kind of medical devices, which is kind of worrying. If we think about how we protect critical infrastructure, probably we need to be doing something similar with medical. So again, if you're in a hospital and there's a medical workstation, it talks about the Becton Dickinson Zalaris Gateway Workstation. So there's two vulnerabilities that have been identified. I don't know if they're going to be patched. I know that the U.S. Department of Homeland Security's Industrial Control Systems Emergency Response Team issued an advisory detailing the flaw. They're saying that the earlier iterations are, but the new firmware 1.32 and 1.61 aren't. Isn't that kind of worrying that you can go into hospital and, what you're hooked up to can be, hacked by hackers and all kinds of things done. And this actually allows remote control of the medical pumps. It's kind of worrying. Well, on that fun and wonderful note, even, I will leave this morning brief. But again, hopefully, you're probably still reading from all the patches that came out last Tuesday. So hopefully everything gets patched. The interesting thing, I think, this week, we'll start to see what's going on with the governments for sure. But I got a feeling some news will come out over the weekend about this Telegram. Be interesting to see how they're handling the DDoS, against the nation state. So I hope to see a little bit more information, maybe some transparency with them. Anyway, this is 08:47. It is June the 17th, and that was your morning brief.
Shall we play a game?
We got one person online. The workload is enough for like 10 users.